should see maybe supporting it. It's the opposite of that. It's the people in charge clamping down on those below them and crushing them. It's an offensive by the professional class against our history, our culture, and our institutions. This offensive is being bankrolled by corporate America, which tells you everything. Corporate America is either sympathetic to what's happening or too frightened to resist it and decides might as well play along. The result? Millions and millions of dollars have gone to groups like Black Lives Matter. But far more will be going to them or to other groups or to brand new groups that doubtless will dole out more money to favored groups or connected activists. This will change the way the country works. Here's a partial list of what's happened so far. Nike has committed $40 million over the next 4 years to support the black community. They don't say what that means. The company also set the tone for other companies. While they don't care about human rights abuses in China or other dictatorships, they benefit from those. Nike released a very somber ad attacking this country. Nike's not making ads like that celebrating the life and destroyed culture of, say, the Chinese Uyghurs. No, just America. Nike's rival Adidas, meanwhile, pledged $20 million less, but to make up for it, they vowed to create racial quotas for hiring, which are both unconstitutional and racist, but still, from now on, 30% of new hires will be black or Hispanic, the company said. Walmart has pledged a staggering $100 million for an entire Center for Racial Equity. Will they do anything about the countless communities they have destroyed with their ugly box stores filled with cheap plastic garbage from China? No. Procter & Gamble has pledged $5 billion to a new Take on Race fund that will support, quote, existing organizations in North America. We don't know exactly what that means. Video game developer EA pledged $1 million to organizations fighting for racial justice. The eyeglass maker Warby Parker pledged $1 million to groups, quote, combating systemic racism. By the way, we should just pause here and say, none of this sounds objectionable. No one is for racism. No one is for it. But every one of these dollars will go to a group with a political agenda. And trust us, that agenda opposes you and your family and the people you vote for and is devoted to changing this country in ways that are not good for you at all. And it's nothing to do with racism or fighting racism. It's purely a cover. Anastasia Beverly Hills, meanwhile, a cosmetics company, gave $100,000 apiece to 5 groups, including Black Lives Matter. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey took a moment from censoring other people's political beliefs to give $3 million to Colin Kaepernick's group. Colin Kaepernick, you'll remember, defended violent riots just recently. That's cool. He gets $3 million. TikTok, which is owned by the Communist government of China, pledged $4 million to fight racial injustice. No, not in China, where it's ubiquitous, but here, where it's rare. Right. Overall, more than $230 million have been pledged, and more will be forthcoming. Will it buy these companies goodwill? Well, we hope not. Nike's $40 million pledge was met with sneers from many who criticized the company's executive board for not being, quote, diverse enough. So will all that money wind up being spent on? Well, we don't know. And almost nobody is asking that question, though maybe they should. Black Lives Matter activist Sean King, who you remember recently threatened to lynch the men charged in the death of Ahmaud Arbery, repeatedly raised money for different groups only to shut them down with little transparency and no real explanation of what he did with the money. King's own associates called him a fraud, yet he continues to collect donations. Pretty good gig if you can get it. The Minnesota Freedom Fund, meanwhile, which exists to provide free cash bail to people charged with crimes, received $30 million thanks to heavy promotion online from celebrities and donations from big corporations. People donated to spring Minneapolis rioters from jail as quickly as possible. In a transparency document, the Minnesota Freedom Fund, though, says, which, by the way, it says it discriminates based on skin color and who receives bail money. If you can even imagine. That's not legal, again, but it's happening because no one's pushing back. But here's the real headline. So far, of all the money they've received, $30 million, only $200,000 has been spent on bail. that leaves at least $29.8 million left over. Where's that money? We don't know. Imagine if that money went instead to local businesses in Minneapolis that were destroyed by rioters. Local government officials in that city estimate the riots caused at least $55 million in damage. So just 1/4 of the donations we listed above could fix that. And they wouldn't be racist in that they wouldn't be discriminating based on skin color. But no one's giving to that fund. Instead, companies are empowering extremists who created this damage in the first place. Rioting is rewarded. Chadwick Moore is a New York journalist. We're always happy to have him on this program. Chadwick, you look at this, and what's your conclusion?
Well, I don't think there's a blanket answer to all these. Basically, every corporation in this country is sort of bowing to the left as they constantly have been in the age of outrage. I think it's telling. One thing is telling that you touched on is that, if China is on the side of Black Lives Matter, that should tell you something. And if these corporations are banking on the globalist economy and China as the next global leader, well, they've abandoned America. They've abandoned the nation that has made them prosperous and given them the talent and resources in order for them to become what they are. And they've chosen the side of China. They want the global economy. They don't want the nationalist America First economy. They don't really care about the American people anymore.
Well, can I ask
this on it? Sure.
How stupid do you feel? I mean, you've spent your whole life working at jobs and paying your FICA tax. But people go out and burn down Wendy's and Nike writes them a check. Shouldn't you have been rioting all these years?
Right, if that's all it took was just a riot. I mean, my word. Is it good for business? Look at these people, on its face, of course it's not, because these corporations who are virtue signaling constantly realize they must be alienating at least half of their customers or potential customers.
Yes.
So what is really going on here? Is it a kind of payola scheme? Is it a shakedown to the left? If we just give this to you and virtue signal to you, will you leave us alone and not come for us? Well, we all know that never works, because as soon as you bend the knee to the mob, they only want more blood. The
That's right.
far-left mob, who sort of is the face of this, aren't getting more. Well, they don't shop at Walmart, number one. They don't eat at Wendy's, by and large. They're not giving them more customers or money. So what's really behind all this? It's either something deeply political, or it's just the fact that these companies live in, like most of the country, live in constant fear of a very tiny, vocal, violent, anti-civil rights minority in this group, led by groups like Antifa, like BLM, who exist only to shut down discussion, take away First Amendment rights of their political enemies, and they use it by bullying, intimidation, harassment, and that goes with our corporations too. They're not going to give these corporations any more business. They're not going to buy more Nike because of this, because it's not about that. It's about keeping every institution in our society underneath their thumb, and that is what appears to be going on.
That's exactly right. But we should not reward violence, and we are. We should reward people who try hard and do the right
And we
things.
are.
But we're not. Yeah, I know.
We went from an era of the 60s, which was a civil rights era, and now we're in an era of the anti-civil rights era, and these groups are being rewarded for it.
That's exactly right. It is the they're calling for segregation, literally, as if, the ironies.
They're calling for segregation. They're trying to take away your right to speak, your right to assemble, your right to all of your First Amendment rights. Yeah.
Be nice if someone protect us from this. Chadwick Moore, great to see you tonight. Thank you.
Yeah.
We told you last